Sir Lewis Hamilton has pretty much completed F1, breaking multiple records in the process. But the one record he has failed to break is that of World Championships, with the 8th World Championship eluding the British driver. Well, it looks like Sir Lewis Hamilton may be a 6-time champion rather than a 7-time world champion after recent allegations, making breaking that record even harder. Now, many of you will be thinking, what are you going on about? But to explain this, we need to take you back to 2008 and in particular Singapore, or more widely known as Crashgate in F1 circles. Let's be honest, sport and controversy go hand in hand. In football and NFL, there have been countless scandals, and F1 is no different. Crashgate did severe damage to the image of the sport. But what exactly happened? The basics of what happened are quite simple, even if blame and accountability were passed between members of the Renault team. At the Singapore Grand Prix in September 2008, Nelson Piquet Jr. crashed into the wall at the 17th turn on the 14th lap of the race. The location of the accident meant the safety car had to be deployed while the debris was cleared, and Piquet's teammate Fernando Alonso went on to win. Piquet described his crash as a simple mistake, and that, to all intents and purposes, was that. Not exactly headline-worthy news, but it was what unfolded after the race that left most F1 fans in shock. On August 3rd, shortly after the 2009 Hungarian Grand Prix, Piquet was released by Renault. Piquet, claiming he had an understanding with the team, was livid and within days claimed he had crashed on orders. After weeks of speculation and rumor, on September 4th, Renault was charged with conspiracy. Naturally, Renault did what everyone else would have done and denied, but in a strange turnaround, the F1 team decided not to contest the charges, and managing director Flavio Briatore and executive director of engineering Pat Symonds quit. The story was not done yet though, as at the FIA hearing, Renault was disqualified from F1 and suspended for 2 years. Briatore was suspended from all Formula One events and FIA-sanctioned events indefinitely, while Symonds received a 5-year ban. Both bans were appealed and overturned, but the pair agreed to never work in F1 again. So what does this have to do with the 7-time world champion Lewis Hamilton? Well, until this point, the Crashgate scandal had just been accepted by the F1 community and we all moved on. But recent events have brought it back into the limelight, and in particular, a recent interview by Bernie Ecclestone, the F1 Supremo. Bernie Ecclestone is a bit like Marmite, with some fans loving him and others loathing him. Whether you love or hate Bernie, you have to give the man some credit, or possibly all of it, as he took F1 from a niche racing competition to a global phenomenon over a 4-decade period. In that remarkable period, Ecclestone revolutionized the sport. He brought the Brabham team and won 2 world titles, including a historic first with a turbo engine in 1983. He turned F1 into the biggest annual sporting event in the world, outstripped only by the Olympics and the World Cup. And he controversially took the commercial rights away from the teams and made himself a billionaire. He fought off a criminal prosecution for blackmail that arose from a complicated series of sales of those rights. He carved a notorious reputation for making controversial statements, including saying Adolf Hitler was able to get things done and likening women to domestic appliances. It was a pretty colorful career for a man that started life from humble beginnings and essentially had unrivaled power in F1, but like all things, his reign came to an end. And he has been in and around the scene of F1 since he left the sport, but this time as more of a spectator, with the odd controversial statement, just like his most recent interview on the Crashgate scandal. Max and I were informed during the 2008 season about what had happened in the race in Singapore. Piquet Jr. had told his father Nelson that he'd been asked by the team to deliberately drive into the wall at a certain point in time in order to trigger a safety car phase and help his teammate Alonso. We decided not to do anything for the time being. We wanted to protect the sport and save it from a huge scandal, Ecclestone told F1 Insider. Clearly, Bernie did not foresee the drama that unfolded after the race and the subsequent scandal that hit the sport. The real question is, as much as Bernie didn't want to hurt the sport's reputation, surely there must have been a rule to stop these sorts of events from happening. Well, there is, but it goes in favor of the winner rather than the loser of the whole situation. There was a rule at the time that a World Championship ranking was untouchable after the FIA awards ceremony at the end of the year. So Hamilton was presented with the World Championship trophy and everything was fine, said Bernie. In every situation, there is a winner and a loser, and this situation is no different. The winner in this instance was Lewis Hamilton, with the young British driver at the time going on to win the championship, and the loser was Felipe Massa. Singapore had a pivotal implication on Massa as the Brazilian driver eventually lost the championship by a point on the final day to Hamilton. Now, we all know Bernie is not one to shy away from dropping bombshells, and his latest statement has caused quite a stir in the F1 world. "I still feel sorry for Massa today," Eccleston admitted. "He won his final at his home race in Sao Paulo, did everything right. He was cheated out of the title he deserved, while Hamilton had all the luck in the world and won his first championship. Today, I would have handled it differently. That's why for me, Michael Schumacher is still the sole record world champion, even if the statistics say otherwise." Yep, Bernie went there, and the story doesn't end there, as rightfully so. If you're a Massa fan, or if you were Felipe Massa yourself, you would be fuming after hearing the most recent statement from Bernie, and that is exactly what has happened, with the Brazilian driver not looking at claiming the 2008 title through legal action, with the former Ferrari driver having this to say. "There is a rule that says that when a championship is decided, from the moment the driver receives the champion's trophy, things can no longer be changed, even if it's been proven a theft," he said. "At the time Ferrari's lawyers told me about this rule, we went to other lawyers and the answer was that nothing could be done, so I logically believed in this situation. End of the story there. No challenge is needed and the title stays with Lewis and Mercedes, with both Ferrari and Felipe losing out. Well, not quite, as Massa is looking into his options to have the title stripped from Hamilton and Mercedes and given to him. But after 15 years, we hear that the former owner of the category says that he found out in 2008, together with the president of the FIA, and they did nothing so as to not tarnish the name of F1. This is very sad to know the result of this race was supposed to be cancelled, and I would have a title. In the end, I was the one who lost the most with this result, so we are going after it to understand all this." This is a pretty crazy situation, and one that will probably need to be studied closely, but could Lewis Hamilton really be stripped of the title and lose his 7-time world championship status, with very little hope of breaking his equaled record with Schumacher? Well, let's look at the situation. If the FIA would do anything, they would most likely disqualify the winner of Singapore, Fernando Alonso, from the race, as Renault and Alonso ultimately benefited from this situation. If they were to do this, then all finishers would move up one place, and effectively Nico Rosberg would have won the Singapore Grand Prix, and Lewis would have been second, effectively giving him 8 points and not 6 points. But the real question is, what would have happened to Massa? He would have gone from 13th to 12th, meaning he would go from 0 points to a whopping 0 points. In short, the difference in the final World Championship standings would have actually widened. Okay, fine, but what about the legal aspect of the whole situation? Well, this is not in favor of Massa either, as effectively when you participate in a sporting event, in this case the Formula One World Championship, you automatically agree to the regulations in force. What does this mean for Felipe? Well, it's not very good, as there are 2 standout rules that go against the Brazilian. The first being a post-race protest not allowed, and any right to a review expires 14 calendar days after a race. Second, the final standings of the World Championship are irreversible after the annual FIA awards ceremony. There are no exceptions to this. Yeah, not looking good for Felipe, but what about the International Sports Tribunal, CAS? Surely they can step in to sort out this mess, but not exactly, as the Most Sport Federation statute states the CAS can only be asked about doping cases, and there is no question of that. Looks like Felipe doesn't have much of a choice but to accept the result of 2008 and concede that Hamilton is the rightful winner of the championship. Now, do you think that the result is fair, or should the FIA have done something at the time? Comment below.